Welcome back to Thoughts of Ascendance of a Bookworm. Today is episode 10, Till a Second Winter. The episode starts with mine informing us that it has been a year since she became mine, and that it is pork stocking day again. We now see mine in bed, and this feels random in the anime. Mine is just a frail person in general, so it's not unreasonable that she became ill. But the light novel tells us that mine is ill here due to exhaustion. She also points out that it's been 3 days since she got her fever, which hasn't happened in a while. This immediately sets up the problem for this episode, being Mine's deteriorating condition nicely. With Mine worrying slightly over her prolonged illness, the devouring attacks her. However, Mine has a tactic of shoving it in a box and putting a lid on it. That's a nice way of compressing it. I'm glad it works. We then get a reminder that Mine needs to stay motivated to stave off the devouring. And so, Mine says she just needs to distract herself. Correct me if I'm wrong, but distracting yourself and staying motivated are not the same thing. So the word choice here feels odd to me. But Mine then grabs a magically appearing wooden board and says Benno told her to read it over. Before we find out what it's about though, Mine's family returns and Tuli comes to show off the bacon. Oh, Lutz is also here. I feel you, Mine. I'm surprised by his presence too. But being the great guy he is, he says he came to check up on her, and says it's unfortunate she missed out on pork stocking day again. Mine says she's glad she missed it though, and given her experience last year, I'm not surprised. We now see Lutz blaming himself for Mine's illness, as he failed to monitor her condition, but Mine says he's been a major help. With Mine saying she can go to the store tomorrow though, she shows Lutz the board she was reading earlier. Now I think it's time for a round of translation truths. Is this board saying anything meaningful, or is it just nonsense again? Surprise, surprise, it's useless. Although Benno did sign his name properly. His E's could do with some work though. In fact, his handwriting in general could use some work. But Chibi Benno now goes over the rules written down. They're to smarten up, learn to read and write, and learn to use a calculator, all of which are to be done over the winter. Mine then tells Lutz her concerns over money for the clothing. We now move to the Gilberta company, and it's nice to see Benno's top priority being if Mine is doing better. It shows that he cares. But Mine returns the list, and it's really impressive how Benno's handwriting has gotten even worse on the same board. His E doesn't look anywhere near the same, just a funny detail. With Mine asking about appearance, Benno says they'll need work clothes and shoes and claims 10 small silvers should be enough. Proper merchant stuff there too. He could have just said 1 large silver, but he said 10 small silvers instead to make it seem like not as much. But that is some expensive clothing. Given that it will probably be custom made, it makes sense, but 100,000 leon or £1,000 according to Latoki is a lot. Mine reminds them about the money they deposited. Money is a bit of a weird one for me. Obviously, we don't see all exchanges in the anime or even in the novels. But to me, it feels like they can be a dirt poor when needed and have enough money when the story demands it. If Lutz had deposited all of his small silvers into the bank, he would have 2 small silvers, one from the initial paper purchase and one from Frida's hairpin. So unless the guild bank has some serious compound interest, Lutz made bank off screen, or money just appeared in his account. I would like to know, so do let me know if you know. Benno and Mine then tell Lutz that it is important to save in order to have capital for new projects, as well as if anything unexpected pops up. Lutz then gives his thoughts, saying that he always believed you were supposed to share your earnings with your family and felt guilty if he didn't. This emphasizes how poor most families are, that they need multiple incomes to support themselves, even from their children. However, Mine cheers Lutz up by telling him it's responsible to save money. Moving on from appearance, Benno tells Lutz that he needs to develop some manners. Benno was clearly watching during their first lunch. Mine says about adding please and thank yous, and Lutz kinda uses it unnecessarily, causing Benno to laugh at him. After Benno recovers from his laughing session, he informs us that there is an issue with the simple all-in-one shampoo, and that he can't sell it as it is. We now learn about what happens if a contract is violated. Death. Lutz and mine should have read the terms and conditions before signing, I suppose, but knowing that their lives are now on the line, they head straight over to the workshop. Following a demonstration of the process, mine identifies the issue in the method having everyone on edge. She then explains that the cloth being used is too well made and so lacks the pores for sediment to pass through, which is a crucial part. It really sucks when you get wronged for buying nice equipment. Lower your standards, Benno, and then you'll do just fine. Mine then tells them about scrubs to avoid them wasting all of the oil they had already extracted. Mine goes full on nerd mode here, and you can see that's just stun locked yet again. This knowledge doesn't slide past Benno or the workshop guy though, and mine starts fearing for another Lutz situation. I just want to say that I love calling it the Lutz situation. In fear of being found out, she says it'll cost them to make her say more, but Benno is happy to pay. In the office, Benno pulls out the big guns straight away and offers 2 small golds, but mine says take this seriously and counters with 3 small golds. Now, I feel for Benno on this one. 3 small golds is crazy. I could not imagine paying £30,000 for some improvements. Mine has learnt from the best though, and uses Benno's own philosophy against him. With this, he agrees to 3 small golds. However, mine isn't done and starts backtracking by asking if he's really okay with that. This scene has always felt off to me because it's like, mine, are you stupid or something? I know you can negotiate better than this. But in the novels, she made the price higher, hoping Benno would back down. She didn't even want to sell the information in order to avoid the Lutz situation repeating itself, but accepts when Benno talks about the devouring. If not for that, she wouldn't have even done it for 3 small golds. So I wish this scene was portrayed better in the anime. Benno then talks about the devouring, and says the only thing he can do for her is pay her well for her information. Mine then explains scrubs and the materials needed to Benno. During this exchange though, we can see Benno's notes. So is it real or fake text? It's fake. I don't blame them. Benno asks if she's tried all of these, but mine says her family is too poor to get all of them. Strange behavior, and Benno notices this. And with his stern face, it really does feel like a Lutz situation 2.0. Now, when Benno asks who she is, mine says that's a secret. There aren't enough small golds to make me talk. It really irritates me in the anime because we can't see if mine actually says this line or if she just thinks it. But checking the novels again, she actually does say it. And I love that. Not only is this line incredibly suspicious, but by it being said, she's essentially drawing a firm line with Benno. She is happy to work with him, but if he tries to dig too deep, she will leave. Seeing mine in the reflection of Benno's eyes shows us how he's truly thinking about her. And mine's question of if he'll reject her because she's creepy is wonderful. I love how this scene is done. But Benno will not let go of mine that easily. She clearly knows far more than she lets on, and he is prepared to exploit that for money as much as he can. It's nice how the tension just vanishes as well once Benno starts ruffling mine's hair. Benno now tells mine of the naming problem, and that simple all-in-one shampoo is a mouthful. But I like it because it's a mouthful. He then suggests AIO shampoo. A bit basic, but it'll work. That said though, I like it more than Shim Sham. Personally, I like Hair Shine, something Benno called it before. But with them both readying up to sell a ton of AIO shampoo and hair ornaments, we reach the midpoint of the episode. Returning to the episode, and we see mine telling the others about hair ornaments needing to be made as word about Frida's spread. With Effa saying winter is their busiest time of year, mine pulls out 2 medium bronzes and says she got an advance payment. 2 small bronzes per ornament. With this promise of payment, we see Tuli and Effa get straight to work by what mine claims to be magic. I personally say bribery, but tomato tomato, am I right? I would briefly like to explain the payment for these hair ornaments to you in case you haven't read the novels and are curious. I know I was. So initially they were paid 5 medium bronzes per complete ornament, being split 3 to mine and 2 to Lutz, as the stick is easier to make. So they keep 1 medium bronze, which they probably save, and pay their families the rest if they help, that is. Gunter then asks if he needs to make the pins, but Mine shuts him down by saying Lutz is doing that. To cheer him up, though, Mine says she wants to visit the gate and asks if he can take her. At the gate, Otto asks Mine how she's feeling before Tromba is announced, and the guards rush off to deal with it. Fearing the Tromba, Mine's devouring shows back up, leading to Mine saying how it's happening more often, further telling us about her worsening condition. We are now joined by Lutz, and we see that they gathered a lot of Tromba wood. Benno's stonks are about to go up. With the cold winds of winter starting to arrive, Mine says a hot potato would be perfect. Lutz, on the other hand, is lamenting going into the river, fearing for his health with the freezing temperatures. Mine suggests using well water though, which would enable papermaking throughout the year, not just during the spring and summer. She still focuses more on the butter though. We now get more insight into Lutz's family, with him saying they refused to help him make the hair sticks. Mine then tells him he just has to use some magic, before helping him convince his brothers by dropping a ton of cash in front of their faces. Wait, what's this? More members of the Rainbow Hair Squad? I swear they never end. But they start helping out once they find out about the payment, leading Lutz to celebrate and Carla to look on worriedly. Could it be a skyline shot after so long? But we are at the well with Effa and Carla is complaining to Effa about Lutz wanting to be a merchant. Here she points out that merchants are con men. So is that just the general perception of merchants, or was her family personally conned by one? The fact that Carla clearly disagrees with Lutz's choices, but Lutz ignores her anyway, is further building up the tension within his family. Effa tries to help out though, by saying Benno seems like a good guy since he's paying for her handiwork and all. We get a sense of Carla's concern then though, saying it's an unstable profession. I'm not too sure about that one though, because in just a few months, Lutz has brought home a lot of money, and that's before he becomes an apprentice. Seeing Mine and Lutz head off though, Effa says she's grateful to him for always helping Mine. They then briefly discuss Mine's improved health, which is quite ironic given that this episode has gone out of its way to show her declining health. Returning to Mine and Lutz, we can see Lutz complaining about Carful. I don't blame him at all either. Much like in our world, potatoes here are a cheap yet nutritional source of food, so Lutz probably eats them most days. Lutz gets impressed by the steamed potato though, and enjoys the rest. Mine reveals that culinary advancement doesn't exist in this world, as people don't steam food. But we now see that well water did in fact work for paper making, but they're going to leave the final stages until the spring. Mine's fever now takes over, and she gets confused. By this point, it should be clear that being stress-free can only do so much. By lacking the money to get the expensive tools to remove her mana, Mine will eventually succumb to her devouring. Lutz is here this time though, and worries over Mine. He's clearly worried because he talks himself through Mine's stable condition with no signs of developing a fever. When Mine tries to brush it off though, Lutz asks if he can do anything, but they lack the money to do so. Wanting to do anything he can, Lutz tells Mine he'll carry her, as it's all he can do. On the walk home, it's silent. We get an insight into Mine's feelings here, with her saying that despite all of the books she's read, she doesn't know what to say to Lutz. She says Lutz is too nice, which we were already well aware of, before listing the reasons. Mine then tries to comfort Lutz by telling him not to blame himself and that she won't give in yet, but Lutz doesn't respond. He just cries quietly. Now this is one of my favourite scenes in the entire anime. Mine not knowing what to say is such a great feeling. That despite all of her time reading books and gaining knowledge, she doesn't know what to say since she's never been in a situation like this. I also want to point out the music too. This particular song is often used for emotional, sadder moments, and is one of the ones I tend to recognize the most. But the song's title is simply Arigato, or thank you, conveying the emotions Mine feels towards Lutz in this moment. It's so well done. Lutz not answering but crying quietly to himself is also so well done. It shows that he cares and that he is worried about Mine. You can understand it too. He's just accepted Mine for who she is, and now he's told she's dying without him being unable to help. It's emotional and a beautiful scene for me, even if it is only a short one. At the Gilberta Company, Benno has a chat with Lutz one-on-one. He asks Benno to save Mine, and asks what he can do. Benno encourages Lutz to step up and not make Mine worry about her. We know, and Benno clearly knows, that Mine is far more emotionally and mentally developed than her appearance lets on, and that she will tough it out. So all Lutz can do is to not make her worry about him, and make all her ideas a reality, to make money and buy the treatment. A nice scene to show Benno helping Lutz, and Lutz finding his determination. The next day, Mine says Lutz was back to normal, obviously a result of the talk he just had with Benno, and they go to the Gilberta Company. Having delivered the hair ornaments and being paid, Mine asks if they could sell the detailed baskets she made back in episode 3. At this point, Benno is unsurprised that Mine was behind yet another product, and asks if she has any more profitable products instead, like consumables. From a business perspective, this makes sense, since consumables need to be bought constantly, whereas a basket would maybe be bought by a person once every few years, depending on how well they look after it. Mine suggests candles and soaps, and says she knows how to make them, but it would take some trial and error. With Benno giving his approval and Mine getting fired up though, she collapses from the devouring. What is with the chair falling back dramatically though? I just can't understand it. But with everyone panicking and Benno ordering a carriage, that ending plays. Chibi segment time, and this one's weird, lacking both Mine and Ferdinand for the most part. Lutz tells Benno to do something and ask the guildmaster, but Benno has been thinking ahead and has already done so. Hearing this, Lutz praises Benno really dramatically before Benno tells us he got a deal of one magic item for just 2 small golds. With some super extra poses and Benno calling it an investment, then out of the goodness of his heart, Mine jumps in demanding her preview time back. But with that unusual chibi segment, the episode ends. Thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed. Please leave your thoughts down below. Bye!